The stars looked the same as they always did. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge, and watched them through the main window. He had been in space for 15 years, and the view never got old. Somewhere out there, beyond the darkness, were millions of worlds with millions of different kinds of life. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Amy Rodriguez said from her station. She was his first officer, and she had good instincts. When Amy said something was strange, Jake always listened. What kind of strange? Jake walked over to her console and looked at the screen. The Talveen system. We should be getting signals from there. Radio, communications, normal traffic. But there's nothing. Complete silence. Amy pressed a few buttons, checking her readings again. That system has over 4 billion Chirruk living there. They should be talking, broadcasting, doing something. The Chirruk were a peaceful species. They looked like large insects with 4 arms and shiny shells that changed colors when they talked. Jake had met a few of them at diplomatic meetings. They were farmers, mostly. They grew food on their 3 planets and sold it across the galaxy. Nice people. Always smiling, if you could call it that. Maybe their equipment is down, Jake suggested, but he didn't believe it. An entire system going silent didn't just happen. "I don't think so, sir. I'm checking the logs. They were broadcasting normally 2 days ago. Then everything just stopped." Amy looked up at him, and Jake could see worry in her eyes. "Change course. Take us to Talveen. Maximum speed." The ship turned and jumped into faster-than-light travel. The journey would take 6 hours. Jake spent that time in his ready room, reviewing everything they knew about the Talveen system. He found reports about tension with the Krath Dominion. The Krath wanted the Chirruk farming worlds. They had made offers to buy them, then demands to take them. The Chirruk had said no every time. The Krath were not a nice species. They were warriors, conquerors. They had a big military and they used it. But surely they wouldn't attack a peaceful farming colony. That would violate a dozen galactic laws. The Council would never allow it. When they arrived at Talveen, Jake knew something terrible had happened. The orbital stations were destroyed. Huge pieces of metal floated in space, torn apart by weapons fire. The planetary shields that protected the worlds below were gone, shattered. As they got closer, Jake could see burn marks on the surface of the first planet. "Oh God," Amy whispered. "Sir, I'm scanning the surface." "The cities? They're gone. All of them." Jake felt cold. "What do you mean, gone?" "Destroyed, burned. I'm reading massive weapon impacts. Nuclear, plasma, kinetic bombardment. They hit every population center." Her voice shook. "Captain, I'm not detecting any life signs. That's impossible. 4 billion people don't just disappear. Scan again. Check for underground shelters, bunkers, anything." The crew worked in silence. Lisa Bennett, their doctor, came to the bridge. She was a small woman with gray hair, but she had seen plenty of bad things in her career. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Captain, I'm getting some readings," Chris Palmer said from the sensor station. He was their intelligence officer, good at finding things others missed. "There's a bunker complex on the northern continent of the second planet. I'm detecting life signs, not many, maybe a few hundred. Take us down. Prepare a rescue team." They landed near the bunker. The air outside was thick with ash. The sky was dark, blocked by smoke and debris. Jake led the team down into the underground shelter. What they found would stay with him forever. There were 847 Chirruk survivors. They were hiding in a bunker built to hold 500. They had no food left. Many were injured. All of them were terrified. An elderly Chirruk named Velik told them what happened. His shell had lost its color, turned dull gray with grief. "The Krath came 3 days ago," Velik said, his 4 arms shaking. "They didn't attack military targets. They didn't ask for surrender. They just started killing. They bombed the cities first, then sent soldiers to hunt anyone who survived. They wanted to make sure no one was left." "Why?" Lisa asked, treating a wounded Chirruk child. "Why would they do this?" "Because we said no," Velik answered simply. "We wouldn't give them our worlds. So they took them and removed us from existence." Jake watched a Chirruk mother hold her dying child. The small one looked up at Lisa and asked in broken human language, "Why no help? Why no one come?" The child died before Lisa could answer. The doctor closed the small Chirruk's eyes and turned away, her shoulders shaking. Over the next 2 days, they searched the entire system. They found bodies, millions of them. The Krath had been thorough. They had systematically destroyed every Chirrut city, town, and village. It wasn't war. It was extermination. It was genocide. Chris Palmer found something else in the orbital debris. A Krath data recorder, probably from one of their ships. He cracked the encryption and showed Jake what was inside. "Sir, this isn't the first time," Chris said, his face pale. "The Krath have done this before. 3 other species in the past 10 years. They find a species with something they want, make demands, and if the species refuses, they wipe them out completely." "Why hasn't the Council stopped them?" Jake demanded. "They know, sir. There are reports, investigations, strongly worded letters, but no action. The Krath have the 2nd largest military in the galaxy. The Council is afraid of them, so they do nothing." Jake felt rage building inside him. "Show me everything." "I want every piece of evidence we have." They spent another day documenting the genocide. They took recordings, collected data, interviewed survivors. Lisa cataloged the weapons used, the methods of killing. It was brutal, efficient, and deliberate. Jake called his crew together in the mess hall. They were all affected by what they had seen. Some were crying. Others just stared at nothing, trying to process the horror. "I'm sending everything we found directly to Earth," Jake told them. "Not to the Council. To Earth. To our government, our people, our media. Everyone needs to see this. The whole galaxy needs to know what happened here and what the Council allowed to happen." "Will it matter?" Amy asked quietly. "Will anyone care enough to do something?" Jake looked at his crew, at these good people who had just witnessed something evil. "I don't know. But I know humans. We have a history of standing up to bullies, even when it's dangerous, even when everyone tells us not to. Maybe we're stupid that way, or maybe we're the only ones who remember what justice means." He sent the data to Earth using emergency channels. Then he sent it to every human colony, every human ship, every human station in the galaxy. He made sure everyone would see it. 3 days later, Earth responded. President Daniel Hayes appeared on every screen across human space. Jake watched with his crew as the president spoke. "My fellow humans," Daniel began, "I'm about to show you something terrible. Something that will make you angry. Something that should make you angry." The president showed them everything. The destroyed worlds, the dead children, the survivors who asked why no one helped them. He showed them the evidence of previous genocides. He showed them the Council's reports that recommended no action. "The Galactic Council has decided that peace is more important than justice," Daniel said. "They have decided that some species are acceptable losses. That genocide is just the cost of doing business with powerful empires." The president paused, and Jake could see the anger in his eyes. "But we are human," Daniel continued. "Our ancestors fought against genocide. They said never again, and they meant it. That promise wasn't just for humans. It was for everyone, for any species, anywhere, that faces extermination simply for existing." Jake watched as the president laid out Earth's position. They would bring the evidence to the Council. They would demand action against the Krath. They would demand justice for the Chirrut. "And if the Council refuses," Daniel said, his voice hard, "then we will act alone." The message ended. The crew sat in silence for a moment. Then Amy spoke. "We're really going to do this? Fight the Krath? They have fleets, armies, weapons. We've been at peace for 70 years. "We've been at peace," Jake agreed. "But humans didn't forget how to fight. We just chose not to." "There's a difference," Lisa shook her head. "But if we fight them, we'll become like them. Violent. Killers." "No," Jake said firmly. "The Krath killed billions of innocent people for refusing to give up their homes. If we fight them, it will be to stop them from doing it again. There's a difference between murder and justice, between cruelty and protection." Chris pulled up star charts. "The Krath will think we're bluffing. They know humans haven't fought a war in decades. They think we've gone soft." Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then they're about to learn something about humans. We didn't go soft. We just put the monster away, but we always knew where to find it when we needed it." The ship began its journey back to human space. Behind them, the Talvine system burned. 847 Chirrut survivors were all that remained of a civilization of 4 billion. They were evidence of what happens when good people see evil and choose to do nothing. Jake stood on the bridge and watched the stars. They looked different now. Before they had been beautiful, full of possibility. Now he saw them as a dark ocean, and somewhere in that darkness were predators. The Krath thought they were the apex predators. They thought no one would The evidence hit Earth like a bomb. Within hours, every human across 47 star systems had seen the footage from Talveen. They saw the burned cities. They saw the dead children. They saw the survivors asking why no one had helped them. Protests erupted on every human world. People filled the streets demanding action. The message was clear and loud. Never again meant never again for everyone, not just humans. Kate Sullivan had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 5 years. She was a skilled diplomat who had negotiated trade deals and peace agreements. She had always believed that problems could be solved with words and patience. That belief died when she saw what happened to the Chirik. She stood in the council chambers, a massive circular room where representatives from 40 different species gathered. The air smelled of a dozen different atmospheres mixed together. Translators hummed softly, converting thousands of languages into something everyone could understand. I present evidence of genocide committed by the Krath Dominion against the Chirik species, Kate said, her voice steady despite her anger. She displayed the footage on the main screens. 4 billion innocent civilians were systematically exterminated. This was not war. This was murder. The council representatives watched in silence. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked away. None looked surprised. Ambassador Sullivan, the Vrexian delegate, said when the footage ended. He was a tall, thin creature with purple skin and too many eyes. This is indeed tragic. However, the council must consider the larger implications of any response. Implications? Kate couldn't keep the anger from her voice. 4 billion people are dead. What implications matter more than that? A bird-like selfie representative spoke up, her feathers ruffling. The Krath Dominion has the second most powerful military in the galaxy. Any action against them would result in war. A war that would kill billions more. So your solution is to do nothing? Kate looked around the chamber. To let them get away with genocide because you're afraid? We prefer the term strategic patience, another delegate said. We have filed formal protests. We have issued sanctions. These things take time. The Chirik don't have time, Kate said coldly. They're already dead. The council debated for 3 hours. They discussed international law, diplomatic protocols, and economic impacts. They talked about everything except the actual dead people. In the end, they voted. 40 delegates total. 37 voted against military action. 2 abstained. Only Earth voted for intervention. Kate stood and gathered her materials. Let me be very clear about what's going to happen next. Earth moves to formally withdraw from the Galactic Council effective immediately. That got their attention. Several delegates stood up, speaking over each other. You cannot simply withdraw, the Vrexian protested. There are procedures, agreements. We had an agreement, Kate said. Part of that agreement was that the Council would prevent atrocities like genocide. You just voted to ignore that responsibility, so we're done here. She walked toward the exit. Before she left, she turned back one last time. You've built a civilization based on fear. You let the strong do whatever they want, because you're too scared to stop them. You've forgotten that sometimes standing up to bullies is worth the risk. She paused. But we haven't forgotten. Now you're going to see what humans look like when we stop being polite. The message she sent back to Earth was simple. They said no. It's our move now. President Daniel Hayes called an emergency meeting of his military commanders. In a secure room deep beneath the Capitol, the people who would plan humanity's war gathered around a table. General Ben Carter was the first to speak. He was an old soldier with gray hair and scars from the last time humans had fought a real war, decades ago. Mr. President, if we do this, we're committing to a fight against one of the most powerful militaries in the galaxy. Our forces are smaller. We haven't fought a major conflict in 70 years. But we have been preparing, Admiral Maria Vasquez added. She commanded Earth's home fleet, the ships that protected human space. We've been building and researching. We just didn't advertise it. Daniel looked at each of them. Tell me honestly, can we win? Maria pulled up holographic displays. The Krath have more ships than us. More soldiers. More resources. On paper they should crush us, but... Daniel prompted. But we have advantages they don't know about. Maria continued. We've been developing weapons technology in secret. Nothing illegal, just classified. The Krath think they know what human ships can do. They're wrong. Ben leaned forward. We've also been training differently. The Krath fight like most galactic powers. Honorable, traditional, by established rules. We've been training to fight like humans used to fight. Fast, dirty, unpredictable. We'll use tactics they won't expect. What about casualties? Daniel asked the hard question. They'll be high, Ben admitted. We're talking about war with a major power. People will die. But if we don't act, more species will die. The Krath will keep doing this because no one stops them. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he made his decision. Activate all protocols. Mobilize the fleets. Send messages to every human colony and station. We're going to war. What's our objective? Maria asked. Complete destruction of Krath military capability, Daniel said firmly. Not occupation. Not conquest. We remove their ability to ever commit genocide again. Within 24 hours, humanity transformed. Reserve forces were called up. Factories that made civilian goods switched to military production. Ships that had been exploring distant stars returned home to refit for combat. Every human system contributed what it could. The galaxy watched nervously. Most species thought humans were making a mistake. A few quietly cheered. The Chirrut survivors sent a message of gratitude and sorrow. They knew what was coming would be bloody. The Krath response was predictable. Their supreme commander, a massive warrior named Throk, sent a message that was broadcast across the galaxy. The humans make threats they cannot back up, Throk declared. They have played at peace for so long they have forgotten how to fight. If they want war, we will remind them why the Krath are feared. 1 week after Earth withdrew from the Council, a Krath invasion fleet was detected heading toward the Pelion system. The Pelion were a small species, only 500 million people spread across 2 moons. They had valuable mineral deposits that the Krath wanted. The fleet's intent was clear. If the Pelion refused to surrender, they would be exterminated just like the Chirrut. Maria gave the order. Send Commander Nick Foster and the Third Fleet. Intercept them before they reach Pelion. Nick Foster was young for a fleet commander, only 35, but he was brilliant. His ships appeared between the Krath fleet and the Pelion system, outnumbered 3-1. The Krath commander sent a message. Human ships withdraw or be destroyed. This does not concern you. Nick's response was simple. No. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The Krath attacked using standard tactics, the kind taught in every military academy in the galaxy. Their ships moved in formation, fired in coordinated volleys, followed established engagement patterns. The human ships did none of those things. They moved like they were alive, dodging and weaving in patterns that seemed random but weren't. They fired weapons the Krath had never seen before, railguns that punched through shields like they weren't there, missiles that couldn't be jammed or intercepted, electronic warfare that crashed Krath systems before they could respond. When the battle ended, 93% of the Krath fleet was destroyed. The remaining ships ran, not retreated, ran, fleeing in panic, leaving their damaged ships behind. Nick rescued the Krath survivors from the destroyed ships. He treated their wounded. He gave them supplies and sent them home with a message. Tell your commander that was humanity being merciful. Next time we won't be. The footage of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that thought humans had gone soft realized their mistake. The Krath, who thought they were the apex predators, realized they might have made a terrible error. On Earth, Daniel watched the battle report. Maria stood beside him. We won, Maria said, decisively. This is just the beginning, Daniel replied. They'll come at us with everything now. We've embarrassed them. They have to respond. Let them come, Maria said grimly. We'll be ready. Kate Sullivan sent a message to the Galactic Council. You said military action would start a war that would kill billions. You were half right. This is a war. But the only billions at risk are the ones the Krath plan to murder. Earth will protect them. She paused, then added, You called us reckless. You said we didn't understand galactic politics. But we understand something you've forgotten. Some things are worth fighting for. Justice is one of them. The message ended with a warning. Any species that aids the Krath will be considered an enemy. Any species that needs protection from the Krath can request Earth's help. And for the Krath themselves, here's our message. You wanted to see what humans would do when you murdered billions of innocent people. Now you're finding out. In his command center, Throk watched the footage of his fleet's destruction over and over. He had thought humans would be easy opponents. Weak from decades of peace, soft from comfortable lives. He had been wrong. His military advisors argued about strategy. Some wanted to hit Earth. The Krath expected humanity to fight like the Council species did. with honor, following established rules of war. They expected formal declarations, military-only targets, and battles fought in open space away from civilians. They were wrong about everything. The first Krath retaliation fleet assembled at their fortress station in the Keldar system. It was their largest military installation, home to 1,200 warships and 50,000 soldiers. They planned to launch a massive assault on human colonies, overwhelming them with sheer numbers. The station stopped transmitting on a Tuesday morning. When the Krath sent scouts to investigate, they found wreckage. The station had been hit by weapons that tore through its shields and armor like paper. The fleet dock there was destroyed. Survivors reported that human ships had appeared without warning, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before Krath reinforcements could arrive. Captain Victoria Kane commanded the strike force that destroyed Keldar Station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for getting things done. Her ships used new stealth technology that made them nearly invisible until they were already firing. Target destroyed, she reported to Admiral Maria Vasquez. No human casualties, minimal Krath civilian casualties, military targets only. Good work, Maria replied. Next target is the Draxon shipyards. They're building new warships there. Take them out. Understood. One question, Admiral. When do we stop? Maria's response was cold. When they can't hurt anyone ever again. Over the next month, human strike forces hit 17 Krath military installations. Shipyards, weapons factories, training centers, supply depots. Each attack was surgical, fast, and overwhelming. The Krath military, which had terrorized peaceful species for decades, suddenly found itself under siege. Supreme Commander Throck tried to adapt. He spread his forces, made his installations more secure, and increased patrols. Nothing worked. The humans seemed to know where every Krath military asset was located. They struck at will, and Krath forces couldn't stop them. What Throck didn't know was that Earth had spent decades building an intelligence network. Chris Palmer and officers like him had been quietly gathering information on every major military power in the galaxy, just in case. Now that information was being used to devastating effect. They're not fighting fair, Throck complained to his generals. There is no fair in war, one of his advisors replied. There is only victory and defeat, and we are losing. The battles themselves were brutal. The Krath were experienced warriors, brave and well-trained. But the humans fought differently. They used tactics the Krath had never seen, weapons they couldn't counter, strategies that seemed designed to create maximum psychological impact. Admiral Paul Griffin was given the task of breaking Krath morale. He was a strategic thinker who understood that wars were won in the mind as much as on the battlefield. His orders were simple: make the Krath afraid. When his fleet destroyed a Krath military convoy, he broadcasted the audio of the battle on Krath military channels. He made sure every Krath commander heard their soldiers screaming, begging for mercy, calling for help that wouldn't come. He wanted them to hear the sound of their forces being destroyed. It was psychological warfare, and it was effective. Krath soldiers started to fear human ships. Some refused to engage. Others surrendered immediately when humans appeared. The warrior species that had terrorized others now knew what terror felt like. Not everyone in the human military was comfortable with these tactics. Jake Morrison, commanding his strike group on the border, received orders to bombard a Krath military colony. It was a planet where Krath soldiers trained and their families lived. Intelligence suggested it had weapons factories hidden among the civilian areas. Jake stared at the orders. They want us to hit military targets in a populated area. Civilians will die. His first officer, Amy Rodriguez, looked troubled. Sir, the Krath put those factories there deliberately. They're using their own families as shields. That doesn't make it right, Jake said. Lisa Bennett, still serving as his medical officer, shook her head. If we do this, we're no better than they are. We're supposed to be fighting to protect innocents, not killing them. The targets are legitimate military objectives, Amy argued. The factories are producing weapons being used to kill our people. Jake made a decision. I'm going to request clarification from command. There has to be another way. He sent his message to Admiral Maria. Her response came back within an hour. Strike the military targets. Minimize civilian casualties where possible. But the mission comes first. The Krath are using their civilians as shields because they think we're too soft to fire. Prove them wrong. Jake looked at his orders again. He thought about the Chirik children who had died. He thought about the other species the Krath had exterminated. He thought about what would happen if the Krath won this war. "Prepare for strike operations," he ordered quietly. "Target only the military installations. Use precision weapons, but if those factories are building weapons, we take them out." The attack was successful. The factories were destroyed. But Jake watched the casualty reports come in. 200 Krath civilians killed, caught too close to the military targets. Men, women, children, families of soldiers, but innocents nonetheless. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. Lisa found him in his ready room staring at nothing. "We killed civilians today," he said. "We destroyed military targets." Lisa corrected gently. "The Krath killed those civilians when they put weapons factories next to schools and homes." "Does that make it better?" "No," Lisa admitted. "But it makes it necessary. The Krath have killed billions. If we don't stop them, they'll kill billions more. Sometimes there are no good choices, only less terrible ones." Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes faced similar dilemmas. General Ben Carter brought him reports of victories, but each victory had a cost. Human casualties were mounting. Thousands of soldiers had been killed, tens of thousands wounded. "The public needs to understand what we're doing and why," Daniel said. "We need to be honest about the costs." He gave a speech that was broadcast across human space. "We're at war with an enemy that has committed genocide against multiple species. Our forces are fighting bravely and they're winning. But victory comes with a price. Thousands of our people have died. More will die before this ends." He paused, letting that sink in. "I know some of you are asking if this is worth it. If protecting alien species is worth human lives, let me tell you why it is. Because if we don't fight this now, eventually the Krath will come for us. Because genocide anywhere is a threat to everyone. And because we're human, and humans don't abandon people who need help." The speech helped maintain public support, but Daniel knew the war needed to end soon. The longer it lasted, the more people would question the cost. The Krath were thinking the same thing. Throck realized his military was being dismantled piece by piece. Every day brought news of another installation destroyed, another fleet defeated. The humans were relentless. He called his top generals together. "We need a decisive victory, something that will break human morale and force them to negotiate." "We could strike at Earth itself," one general suggested. "Take the war to their homeworld." "No," Throck said. "That would only make them fight harder. We need a different approach." "What about their allies?" Intelligence reports showed that several species had quietly begun supporting Earth, providing supplies, intelligence, safe harbor for human ships. Small gestures, but meaningful ones. "If we punish Earth's allies, we show everyone the cost of opposing us," another general said. Throck made a decision that would change everything. Identify one of Earth's supporters. Make an example of them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who help the humans. The target they chose was the Pelion, the small species that humanity had saved from the Krath invasion fleet. The Pelion had publicly thanked Earth and offered their moons as resupply points for human ships. They had a population of only 500 million. They would be easy to crush. When human intelligence detected Krath fleet movements toward Pelion space, alarms went off across the command structure. This wasn't a military target. This was genocide. Maria immediately diverted 3 fleets to Pelion. "Get there first. Protect those people at all costs." Jake's strike group was closest. He pushed his ships to maximum speed, knowing they would arrive outnumbered. The Krath fleet heading to Pelion was massive, clearly intended to overwhelm any defense. As his ships approached the Pelion system, Jake thought about why he was there. Not for territory, not for resources. For people, for innocent civilians who had done nothing except show kindness to others. "All ships battle stations," he ordered. "We hold the line here. No Krath ship gets past us." His tactical officer looked at the sensor readings. "Sir, we're outnumbered 5-1. Reinforcements won't arrive for at least 3 hours. "Then we hold for 3 hours," Jake said simply. Amy looked at him. "Jake, we might not survive this, I know. But those 500 million people down there will. That's what matters." The Krath fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel and found human ships waiting. The Krath commander sent a message. "Human vessels, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Withdraw now and we will let you live." Jake's response was broadcast on all channels. "This is Commodore Jake." 6 months into the war, the numbers told a story. Human forces had destroyed 80% of Krath military capability. Shipyards were rubble, weapon factories were gone, training centers were abandoned. The Krath military, once feared across the galaxy, was broken. But the cost had been terrible. 127,000 human soldiers were dead. Another 200,000 were wounded. Families across human space mourned their losses. Every day, ships returned carrying flag-draped coffins. Admiral Maria Vasquez stood in Earth's main war room, looking at strategic displays. The Krath homeworld, Krath Prime, was surrounded by human fleets. They had enough firepower to crack the planet's surface if ordered. The question was whether they should. "We can end this today," General Ben Carter said. His voice was tired. He had aged 10 years in 6 months. "One bombardment, destroy their homeworld, make sure they can never threaten anyone again." "That's genocide," Kate Sullivan said sharply. The ambassador had stayed on Earth during the war, serving as an advisor to President Daniel Hayes. "It's exactly what we're fighting against." "It's justice," Ben replied. "The Krath killed 4 billion Chirruk. They killed 3 other species before that. They tried to exterminate the Pelion. How many more need to die before we stop them permanently?" The debate had been going on for days. The military wanted to finish the Krath completely. Diplomats and civilians argued that would make humanity no better than the enemy. President Daniel Hayes listened to both sides, knowing the decision would ultimately be his. Lisa Bennett had been brought back to Earth to testify before the government. As the doctor who had treated both human and Krath wounded, her perspective was unique. "I've seen what this war has done to our soldiers," she told the assembled leaders. "They're suffering not just from physical wounds, but from moral ones. They joined to protect innocents. Now some of them wonder if they've become killers instead of protectors." "They are protectors," Admiral Paul Griffin argued. "Every Krath soldier we kill is one who won't murder helpless civilians. Every ship we destroy is one that won't bombard a planet. We're protecting future victims." "By becoming killers ourselves?" Lisa challenged. "Where does it end, Admiral? We kill all the Krath soldiers. Then what? Kill their government, their civilians, their children? At what point do we cross the line from justice to revenge?" Daniel Hayes listened to the debate, his face lined with stress. Finally, he spoke. "Show me the intelligence on Krath Prime." Chris Palmer, who had been analyzing Krath communications, pulled up his data. "Sir, the Krath population is 3 billion. About 60% are civilians. The rest are either active military or support personnel." "What are the civilians saying?" Daniel asked. "Most are terrified. They know what their military did. They know we're outside their planet with enough weapons to destroy them. Some are protesting their own government, demanding they surrender. Others are preparing to fight to the death." Chris paused. "Sir, there are children down there, families who had nothing to do with the genocides. Their families benefit from those genocides," someone argued. "They live on conquered worlds, enjoy the resources stolen from exterminated species. That doesn't make them guilty," Kate said firmly. "Being born in the wrong society isn't a crime." The debate continued. Meanwhile, on the ships surrounding Krath Prime, soldiers waited for orders. Jake Morrison, recovered from his injuries at Pelion, commanded one of the blockade fleets. He watched the planet below, thinking about what might happen next. Amy Rodriguez, now captain of her own ship, sent him a message. "Jake, what do you think command will decide?" "I don't know," he admitted. "What would you do if you were in charge?" Amy was quiet for a moment. "The Krath military needs to be destroyed, that's not a question. But the civilians? I keep thinking about a Krath child I treated after a battle. He was maybe 8 years old, scared, crying for his parents. He didn't choose to be born Krath. He didn't commit genocide. How can I justify killing him?" "Maybe we can't," Jake said. On Krath Prime, Supreme Commander Throck faced his own decisions. His military was defeated, his fleets were destroyed, his people were surrounded and blockaded. He had 2 choices: surrender or fight to the end. His generals urged him to fight. "Better to die with honor than surrender to these humans," they said. But Throck had seen what humans could do. He had watched his mighty fleets reduced to wreckage. He had seen human ships fight against impossible odds and win. He understood now what the humans were. They were apex predators who had chosen to be peaceful, but who remembered how to hunt when necessary. He also understood that if he didn't surrender, the humans might do to his people what his people had done to others: total extermination. If we surrender, he asked his advisors, what will they do to us? No one had an answer. The humans had never indicated their terms. They simply demanded unconditional surrender, or they would continue the war. Back on Earth, the debate reached a critical point. President Daniel Hayes had heard enough arguments. He needed to make a decision. "Bring me the survivors," he said. "The Chirik who survived the genocide. I want to hear what they think." Valak was brought to Earth along with representatives of the other Chirik survivors. The elderly alien stood before the human government, his shell dull with age and grief. "What do you want us to do?" Daniel asked him directly. "The Krath are defeated. We can destroy them completely, or we can show mercy. You're the ones who suffered. What would justice look like for you?" Valak was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft but clear. "Justice would be seeing my wife and children again. Justice would be my planet still alive. But I cannot have justice. Nothing you do will bring them back." "Then what do you want?" Daniel asked. "I want the Krath to understand what they did. I want them to face the consequences. I want them to never be able to do it again." Valak's shell flickered with color, showing emotion. "But I do not want you to become like them. If you exterminate the Krath, you teach the galaxy that genocide is acceptable when you're strong enough. You prove that might makes right." "So we should let them go?" someone asked. "No," Valak said firmly. "You should make them face what they did, make them remember, make them change. That is harder than killing them, but it is the only way to truly win." His words silenced the room. This being, who had lost everything to the Krath, was asking humanity not to seek revenge, but to seek real change. Daniel made his decision. He contacted Admiral Maria and gave his orders. "Prepare a message for the Krath leadership. Here are our terms." The message was broadcast on every channel to Krath Prime. "This is President Daniel Hayes of Earth. Your military is defeated. Your fleets are destroyed. Your ability to wage war is gone. You have two choices. Surrender now and face justice, or refuse and face extermination. You have 24 hours to decide." He listed the terms: complete military disarmament, war crimes trials for anyone involved in genocides, reparations to survivors, human observers stationed on Krath worlds for 2 generations to ensure compliance, full documentation of all genocides made available to the galaxy, mandatory education programs about what was done and why it was wrong. "These terms are not negotiable," Daniel continued. "You wanted to see what monsters humans could be. We've shown you. We've destroyed your military. We've blockaded your homeworld. We could end you completely right now." He paused, letting that sink in. "But we're not like you. We don't exterminate civilian populations. We don't murder children. We don't commit genocide even against those who do." His voice hardened. "But make no mistake. If you refuse these terms, if you force us to continue this war, we will do what's necessary. Your military will be destroyed completely. Your government will fall, and your people will learn what it means to be helpless while someone stronger decides your fate." The message ended. The clock started ticking. On Krath Prime, Throck gathered his remaining leaders. They watched the human president's message in silence. "He's bluffing," one general said. "Humans are soft. They won't actually destroy a planet full of civilians." "Are you willing to bet 3 billion lives on that?" Throck asked. "I've fought them. I've seen what they're capable of. If we refuse, they will carry out their threat." "Then we die fighting," the general insisted. "Why?" Throck asked tiredly. "So you can have an honorable death? What about the children who will burn with you? What about the families who don't want to die for your pride?" The debate among the Krath leadership mirrored the debate on Earth. Hardliners wanted to fight to the end. Moderates wanted to surrender and survive. The clock kept ticking. With 6 hours left, something unexpected happened. Civilians on Krath Prime began protesting. Millions of them filled the streets, demanding their leaders surrender. They didn't want to die for military pride. They wanted their children to live. The military tried to shut down the protests, but there were too many people. The movement spread across the planet. Civilians surrounded military installations, begging soldiers not to force the humans to attack. One protest leader, a Krath civilian named Kelran, gave a speech that was recorded and transmitted. Our military told us we were superior. They told us we had the right to take what we wanted. They killed billions of innocents and said it was necessary. Now we face the same fate, and the war crimes trials began 3 months after the Krath surrender. They were held not on Earth or Krath Prime, but on Talveen, the Chirrut homeworld where the genocide had occurred. The burned cities had been left as they were, a reminder of what had happened. Krath military commanders stood before judges from multiple species, including humans and Chirrut survivors. Supreme Commander Thrak was the first to face trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Orders he had given, battles he had commanded, genocides he had authorized. Velik testified at the trial. He described watching his family die. He showed recordings of cities being destroyed. He spoke for those who could no longer speak for themselves. When he finished, Thrak stood. The proud warrior was gone. In his place was someone who had seen the consequences of his actions. I have no defense, Thrak said. I did these things. I ordered these deaths. I believed we had the right because we had the strength. I was wrong. No punishment you give me will be enough, but I accept whatever you decide. The judges sentenced Thrak to life in prison, along with hundreds of other Krath officers who had participated in genocides. They would spend the rest of their lives working to help rebuild what they had destroyed. The trials lasted for a year. Some Krath were executed for their crimes. Others received prison sentences. Many were required to serve the species they had tried to exterminate, helping survivors rebuild their lives. But the trials were only part of the justice. The Krath education system was completely reformed. Every Krath child now learned about the genocides their people had committed. They visited memorials. They heard testimony from survivors. They were taught that strength without compassion was not strength at all, but cruelty. Jake Morrison spent 2 years stationed on Krath Prime, overseeing the disarmament and reformation. It was hard work. Many Krath resented the occupation. Others struggled to accept what their society had done. One day, a Krath teacher named Vexus approached him. I've been teaching the new curriculum, she said, about what we did to the Chirrut and others. My students are horrified. Some cry, some get angry. They ask me how their parents and grandparents could have allowed this. What do you tell them? Jake asked. I tell them the truth, that we were taught to value strength above all else, that we were told other species didn't matter, that we didn't see them as people, just obstacles. She looked troubled. But the worst part is explaining that most Krath weren't evil. They were normal people who followed evil leaders. That anyone, given the wrong culture and the wrong leaders, could become capable of terrible things. That's an important lesson, Jake said, because it means anyone can also choose to be better. The Reformation was working slowly. A generation of young Krath grew up knowing the truth about their history. They were taught to be ashamed of what their ancestors did, but also taught that they could choose a different path. Meanwhile, the political landscape of the galaxy was changing. The Galactic Council, which had done nothing to stop the genocides, found itself increasingly irrelevant. Species were withdrawing, joining humanity's Frontier Alliance instead. Kate Sullivan became the first ambassador of the Frontier Alliance. Her message was simple. We stand together. We protect each other. If any member species faces extinction, all members respond. 17 species joined immediately. The Chirrut survivors were among the first. The Pelion joined gratefully. Even some former council members defected, tired of an organization that talked about peace but did nothing to enforce it. The council tried to maintain its authority, but it was failing. The Vrexian delegate, who had once argued against intervention, requested a private meeting with Kate. You were right, he told her. We built a civilization on fear and inaction. We told ourselves that some evils were necessary to maintain peace. But all we did was enable monsters, so what will you do? Kate asked. The Vrexian people are voting to join your alliance. We want to be part of something that actually stands for something. He paused. We're not warriors like humans, but we have other skills. Technology, medicine, resources. We can contribute. You don't need to be warriors, Kate said. You just need to care. That's what this alliance is about. Species working together to protect each other. Admiral Maria Vasquez was promoted to head of Frontier Alliance military forces. She began training allied species in human tactics and strategy, not to make them aggressive, but to make them capable of defending themselves and others. We're not building an empire, she explained to her students from various species. We're building a defense network. Every species keeps their independence, their culture, their government. But if one of us is threatened, all of us respond. The training included something unusual: ethics classes. Every officer, regardless of species, had to study the history of genocides, war crimes, and atrocities. They learned about the Chirrut, the Krath genocides, and Earth's own dark history. Lisa Bennett taught many of these classes. It's not enough to be strong, she told her students. You have to be good. Strength without morality is just tyranny. We need warriors who understand that their job is to protect, not to dominate. Admiral Paul Griffin, who had used brutal psychological warfare against the Krath, spoke honestly about his experiences. I did things during the war that I'm not proud of. I scared people. I used their fear against them. It was effective, but it cost me something. He looked at his students seriously. War is sometimes necessary, but it should never be easy. The moment you enjoy causing suffering, even to your enemies, you've lost something important. 5 years after the war ended, the Chirrut homeworld was slowly recovering. The population had grown to 10,000, a mix of survivors and children born after the genocide. Human volunteers helped them rebuild cities, plant crops, restore their culture. Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to admiral, visited Talveen. He walked through the memorial built for the 4 billion who had died. Their names were carved in stone, filling walls that stretched for miles. Velik was there, now very old. His shell was almost white with age, but his mind was still sharp. Thank you for coming, Velik said. I wanted to see you again before I die. You're not dying anytime soon, Jake said, but they both knew it wasn't true. Velik was near the end of his long life. I need to tell you something, Velik said. When you humans first found us, when you saw what had happened, I hated you. Jake was surprised. Hated us? Why? Because you showed me that help was possible. That someone could have saved us if they had cared enough. I hated that no one came until it was too late. I hated that you humans, who we had barely known, cared more than species we had traded with for generations. I'm sorry we didn't get there sooner, Jake said quietly. No, you misunderstand. Velik's shell flickered with color. That hate didn't last. It was replaced by something else. Hope. Because if humans could care that much about strangers, maybe the galaxy could change. Maybe never again really could mean never again for everyone. He gestured at the memorial. 4 billion Chirrut died here. Nothing will bring them back. But because of how you responded, how you fought, how you chose mercy over revenge, other species will live. Billions who would have been killed by the Krath or others like them will survive. My people's deaths meant something because you made them mean something. Jake didn't know what to say. Velik continued. Do you know what the young Chirrut call you humans? They call you the Guardians, the species that watches over others. Some of you don't like that title. You think it's too much responsibility? It is, Jake admitted. Yes, Velik agreed. But it's also necessary. Someone has to be willing to stand up to bullies. Someone has to be willing to fight when fighting is the only option. And someone has to be wise enough to show mercy when the fighting is done. You humans are all of those things. Velik died 3 months later. His funeral was attended by representatives from 40 species. The Chirrut buried him next to the memorial for his family. His last words, recorded for history, were simple. Tell the humans thank you. Tell them to keep being the Guardians. President Daniel Hayes served 2 more terms before retiring. In his final address to humanity, he spoke about the war and what it had meant. We discovered something important about ourselves, he said. We learned that humans have the capacity for both great violence and great compassion. We can be monsters when we need to be, but we choose to be protectors instead. He paused, looking directly at the camera. Some species fear us now. They see what we're capable of and they're scared. Good. Let them be scared. Let potential aggressors know that if they prey on the weak, they'll face us. Let genocidal maniacs know that we're watching. Let tyrants know that somewhere in this galaxy there are humans who will stop them. His expression softened. But let the peaceful species know something else. Let them know that we'll defend them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that never again means never again for everyone. General Ben Carter retired the same year. At his retirement ceremony, he was asked if the war had been worth it. We lost over 100,000 people, he said. Each one was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Was it worth their lives? I can't answer that. But I can tell you what we accomplished. We stopped genocides. We saved billions of lives. We showed the galaxy that,